Here he is, our Canucks reporter, Rink-Wide Vancouver host Jeff Paterson joins us. And Jeff, we were talking yesterday about what makes you nervous, what makes you anxious for the Vancouver Canucks now that they've lost an opportunity to advance in 5 games and have to go back to Nashville for Game 6.
Well, I suppose the law of averages is one thing that jumped out at me immediately. I mean, if the Canucks are going to wrap this thing up in 6, they're going to have won 5 games in Nashville this year. All 5 of their games. They were 2-0 there in the regular season, and they obviously took those 2 down at Bridgestone over the weekend. And so if they go back there and get it done, that just feels like at some point, I think the Predators feel they've played well enough on home ice. And obviously the Canucks snuck out the 12-shot victory on Friday and then the Music City Miracle on Sunday afternoon. So if you're the Preds, you're probably thinking, hey, we're due. But the flip side of that is if the Predators win on Friday and bring it back to Vancouver, for them to come all the way back in this series, they're going to have won not just 3 games at Rogers Arena, but they will have won the last 3 games at Rogers Arena for a Canucks team that was 27-9-5 on home ice, 9 outright losses all year long. Like they were a dominant team at the Rog, and they got the first one, but the Preds have come to town and won twice now. And so something's going to give here, I would imagine. And if the Canucks can win 5 games in Nashville this year, hey, credit to them. And they don't want any part of Game 7. So the challenge is there for them. And we'll see what they can do on Friday night.
And I would love to look through the annals of time. I don't know how long it was to take me, but like how many times do division winners, again, division winners get upset in the NHL playoffs, but in those upsets, how often do they not have a game where they just look themselves? And the Canucks really, through 5 games, have not looked themselves. Yeah. Aren't they due for a game where the Canucks just look like themselves?
But who are the Vancouver Canucks, I guess, is the question I come back at you with. Because, look, since Christmas, the Nashville Predators had more points than the Canucks did. Like, I think that's lost on a lot of people that, yes, the Canucks won their division and they have the higher seed here. But since Christmas, like, we're not talking the All-Star break. We're not talking the last month of the season. Since Christmas, the Nashville Predators had more points than the Vancouver Canucks. They were one of the hottest teams in the second half. And so, the Canucks had this amazing start and everybody snacked and feasted and got their points. But we know the issues with the Canucks, particularly since the All-Star break. And look, you could be the higher seed, but if your best players don't step up in crunch time, then are you the better team? And certainly with the goaltending drama that has plagued the Canucks as well, the goaltending hasn't been the issue that this series is extended to 6 games, but we all know the names. I mean, Rick Tocchet talks around them all the time. He needs more from 4 or 5 guys. And Friday night's the next opportunity, I suppose, for everybody to get this right. Like, I thought the first period in Game 5, maybe the best that they have looked for a single period, but same issues that have plagued them over the last couple of months. Just can't buy a goal, can't score a goal, can't make enough happen and manufacture enough offense. And the way the Predators are playing, like, the Canucks are going to have to find a way to flip that script and change the narrative here.
And totally good point on who are the Vancouver Canucks. One thing I know that they are not, though, they are not 6 shots in arrears of the 15th best team in shots per game this season. Like, that doesn't make any sense. They're in 16th out of 16 playoff teams, and they are 6 shots back of the Vegas Golden Knights, who are surprisingly the 15th place team. Like that makes no sense.
I feel like the Bernie Sanders meme. I'm once again asking a guest if the Canucks can win this series with so few shots on goal.
Well, I asked Rick Tocchet before Game 6, or sorry, before they all run together, before Game 4 in Nashville, the Sunday game, I said to Tocchet, like, at some point as the coach, do you challenge your team to get to a certain number of shots on goal in a first period? Like, let's just set the bar at 10. I would
go really rudimentary like that. I really would.
Yeah. Baby steps, small
he
goals.
Acknowledged that, yes, we need more shots, but, I don't want guys just throwing the pucks to the net from anywhere. Like, this seems to be who the Vancouver Canucks are now, is quality over quantity, but it's not working for them. No, and so at some point, I think you have to veer from what you're doing here. I mean, 5 games in and holding onto the puck, the possession, the slap passes, try to pass the puck into the net. Like, it's not working for the Vancouver Canucks. And the proof is on the score sheet at the end of almost every night in this series. So, look, you get deeper into a series and every competitive advantage matters. And quite frankly, I don't know that Rick Tocchet's done enough coaching in this series, enough tweaking of this lineup. Like, he's made some subtle changes. The goaltending obviously forced his hand, but, he took Connor Garland off the top unit power play, put Elias Lindholm there. Power play that hasn't actually been a masterstroke, because the power play, other than game number 3, the power play keeps coming up dry. He has tinkered a little bit, and we've seen the occasional Lotto Line shift, but there's not much going on there. But I don't think he has forced Andrew Brunette to make any sort of material matchup changes to react to what the Vancouver Canucks are doing. It just feels like Tocchet is content to continue to roll out the same 12 forwards in the same deployment, and that's not working either. And so, look, Elias Pettersson is struggling, right? Like, massive elephant, small room. He's struggling. So he's not getting it done as a center. Like, why not? And I'm not saying this is the way they have to play entire games, but at some point, like, why not put Elias Lindholm back in the middle, move Paterson to the wing, throw the Predators a different look, like, make them adapt, make them adjust, do something. It just feels to me like these, and like the Predators as the lower seed, like, they seem pretty content to go this way. So I don't know. I'm just a little surprised that the Canucks have continued just to, Willie D got roasted back in 2015 for just rolling 4 lines.
Fantastic points, Jeff. All of them. Absolutely right, because really Brunette's pretty much done the same thing as well, other than a spot to play Tyson Barrie for a sick Luke Shin. But no, the lack of adjustment and adaptation from Rick Tocchet and his coaching staff is going to be a big storyline if the Canucks blow this series.
We've been going deep into the Lotto Line stuff, and we'll continue to do so over the next 24 hours. But Matt, at the end of the season, the 80% mark of the season, what was I saying? Lindholm and Pettersson, and then you've got Blue. Do you go back to that? That was the glory days of the season. Bluger with Garland and Joshua again.
Well, I mean, you could do that. You could put Pius Suter in the middle there. Again, This is just throwing some different looks at the Predators to force them to adapt, and maybe it draws them out of their comfort zone a little bit if they have to react. Maybe it forces them to play some of their top guys even more than they'd like to here. Look at the way this series has unfolded. JT Miller has seen an awful lot of like Michael McCarron in that 4th line. And while Miller has produced for the Vancouver Canucks and has had some great moments, they haven't crushed that matchup statistically. And this is, I think, part of the context that matters as well. When we look at the Elias Pettersson struggles, guys, like, he is seeing the middle of the Predators lineup. Like, he's seeing an awful lot of Jason Zucker and Anthony Beauvillier and Mark Jankowski and those types of players. Like, at the outset of this series, if you had said the Miller line and the Forsberg line, if that's a push, who's the next best forward in this series? And I think everybody would have said Elias Pettersson, and he's not getting matchups. He's not getting shadowed. He's not getting checked. He is facing favorable matchups. And that's part of the storyline as well that I don't think is getting the recognition and the talk that maybe it ought to here. And you hope that every game is a new game and a new opportunity for him to bust out and break out. But honestly, I don't even know what a big game would look like from Elias Pettersson at this stage.
How do you feel about young Sheilofs? Do you think there's any chance of Casey DeSmith in Game 5? And are you at all worried that UC Saros has found his game and the Canucks are facing a different animal in the Predators' goal going forward?
Yeah, I don't know what to make of UC Saros' series. Like, other than that Lindholm goal from distance early, he hasn't allowed bad goals, but he had allowed too many goals to have his team trailing 3-1, but he was good the other night. And obviously he gives up just the one to Nikita Zadorov, and Canucks didn't test him enough on the power play, obviously. So would still like to see them pepper this guy whose save percentage would indicate that, he hasn't been as sharp as he would like or the Predators would like. So I do think that there is an opportunity there. And the Canucks goaltending situation, look, Artur Silov's been terrific. I guess right now, as I sit here, I'm expecting that he will get the Game 6 start. But you go with Silovs in Game 6. If it doesn't work, you would then have the option of coming back with Casey DeSmith for Game 7. But by that point, basically a week between starts for Casey DeSmith at a high leverage point in the series. So do you go down that road again? Goaltending hasn't been the issue. I think the Canucks have had enough goaltending here. You can't expect them to run the power play. You can't expect them to come through late in the hockey game and score goals. And that's ultimately what this team needs. So my gut right now is that Silovs will get the Game 6 start, and he's just boosting his stock here along the way. I think laying claim to the fact that he's an NHL goalie now who has spent this season in Abbotsford, but should be here on a full-time basis. And certainly has done a nice job of padding the resume, has not looked out of place being thrown into a tough situation.
A lot of criticism on Filip Hronek after a couple of opportunities to shoot in which he did not late in the game. What have you made of the defense? I mean, you talk about adjustments. You don't change pairings, do you? Or
I don't think so.
No.
No, I mean, unless you wanted to boost more ice time for Zadorov, and I'd be in favor of that. But he's already playing a fair bit and coming through. Look, outside of Elias Pettersson, Filip Hronek has been the biggest disappointment for me individually for a Vancouver Canuck in this series. And I sort of go back to that argument that I made a moment ago. If at the outset of the series, we'd had this talk and I would say, okay, Quinn Hughes and Roman Josi, easily the best two defensemen on paper in this series. But based on their seasons, who's number three? And I think, again, consensus would have been advantage Canucks, Filip Hronek, this guy that came close to 50 points, logged a lot of minutes, had a really nice season for the Vancouver Canucks. Doesn't have a point in the series, just 3 shots on goal, a complete unwillingness to unleash what is a big shot. We know that. I mean, NHL Edge has shown that this guy can fire the puck. And there is some suggestion that there's an elbow injury that's hampering him a little bit, but he is playing every day. He's practicing every day. He's available to the Canucks. The Canucks have been outscored overall in the series and 5-on-5 when he's on the ice. So, you wonder a little bit about, forget the offense, just defensively, not necessarily holding his own in that regard. And look, Nikita Zadorov has skated circles around him in this series, but you go back to the All-Star break, guys. Zadorov has outscored Filip Hronek now for the Vancouver Canucks. Those final 25 regular season games and these 5 playoff games, they're getting more offensive output from Nikita Zadorov, who has been paired almost exclusively with Ian Cole or Noah Juulsen. And he's outscoring Filip Hronek, who has been stapled to the side of Quinn Hughes just by being in Hughes' shadow. You should be picking up points along the way, and that's what he did early in the season. There has been 0 offensive contribution, hasn't been terrific defensively. And honestly, when we talk about guys in the playoffs and Zadorov and earlier in the series, Dakota Joshua and the meter is moving and every game you're adding zeros to the end. I think it has to cut both ways. This absolutely is ammunition for the team to take to the bargaining table when they get around to talking contract here, whenever the playoffs are over. It's just been really, really disappointing for Filip Hronek, who burst out of the gates, put up all kinds of points in the early going again when the Canucks were scoring a bunch of goals and the PDO and everything else. Guys, he has 12 points in his last 37 hockey games. That's basically a 25-point defenseman over a full season at that rate. And those kind of guys don't get anywhere close to $8 million a season. So it's been a tale of two halves without question for Filip Hronek. And at crunch time in the here and now, I thought he had a chance to be an X factor in this series. And unfortunately, that has not been the case for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, well, it brings it to our poll question. Whose stock has changed the most in this series? Jeff, Hronek, Paterson, Sheloffs, Zadorov? Feel free to go off the board.
I'd say Zadorov. I think the way that the crowd has just eaten up everything that he has brought. I mean, obviously, physically built for playoff hockey, but lots of big guys sort of wilt on the big stage. I mean, he has absolutely ramped up his performance beyond the goals, and the only guy that seems to be able to score now for the Canucks at Rogers Arena. But I just think the big hits, just steamrolling McDonough when he stepped out of the penalty box the other night. I mean, talk about the building popping then. He has stepped up in some big moments. And so, I think the fans are on board now. This is a guy that obviously can play playoff hockey, matter of the dollar figure, certainly. But I think there are a lot in Canuck Nation that sort of fear the idea that he may parlay this into, an opportunity to shop himself and have some other teams think, hey, that's the kind of guy that we need as well here. So Silas has just done more of what I've already seen from him in his stints in the NHL. And again, I think he's NHL ready. So yes, he has boosted his stock, but I don't think to the degree that Nikita Zadorov has. Paterson has just been a flop. It has been. I mean, 2 points, none at even strength, 1 on the power play and 1 on the 6-on-5, and they're both the secondary assists as well. So there has been 0 bottom line for Elias Pettersson. That hurts. And quite frankly, I'm bracing myself for, if this goes completely sideways for the hockey club over these final couple of games, bracing myself for a summer of nonstop Elias Pettersson talk. And I don't know if I want to stomach it, but I understand the marketplace and I understand the commitment the team has made to this guy. And, it's not just these playoffs. It's been really the second half of the season and the All-Star break particularly. So
save us, Elias.
So look, Blake and I had a bit of a disagreement on that 2-on-1 that Elias had in Game 5, where he really loaded up that wrist shot, the really big long release. You think it was overthinking and just frustration and wanting to get so much on the shot. I wondered if there was some sort of physical impairment there that forced him to shoot it like that, but it's something that caught your eye as well, Jeff. You were telling us on the golf course yesterday.
Well, look, I'm glad he held and shot, because Phil DiGiuseppe was the option on the 2-on-1.
Right.
And so
yes.
I don't want to live in a world where had he passed and the puck had gone to the corner and we all would have thought, like, what in the world? So I'm glad he shot. You can live with that. But that shot to me doesn't look like the same wrist shot. Like, forget the one-timer. The wrist shot is so heavy. We have seen him pick his spots, be so precise. And in those moments when he doesn't score, it's the kind of wrist shot that a goaltender has trouble with, and it spills rebounds. I mean, this one hit the mask and deflected it out of play. But it just, for me, I go back to the practice day on Saturday in Nashville, and I posted the video of him. Sergei Gonchar was teeing up a bunch of one-timers for Paterson, and he was unloading these one-timers, but off his back foot, and it just looked awkward. Like, it just didn't look like a guy that was able to put his full body into the shot. And he was still getting them off with some velocity, but it was kind of interesting that somebody sent me some video that he had taken, just a Twitter follower, out at UBC a couple of years ago, where Paterson was essentially doing the same thing. And the contortion and the body movement and the range of motion on the one-timers a few years back was incredible. Like, the force that he was getting on those one-timers compared to this one, it just night and day, and it didn't look like the same guy, quite frankly. So,
I can picture it in my mind.
It lends itself to the fact that he's playing through something, but a lot of guys are playing through something at this time of the year. And the fact that he's had zero impact, and again, with the matchups that he's getting, it's been a surprise, obviously, and a massive disappointment.
Yeah, he used to be, or he has in the past, looked twitchier, looked more elastic, getting that good torque, that good whip on the shot.
I can picture it in my mind's eye in the first couple of years. Like,
we saw it in his first game as a Vancouver Canuck, for God's sakes, and it was a constant with Elias Pettersson for some time. Anyways, and then there's the power play, Jeff.
Oh.
Lest we forget about the power play. I don't want to live in a world where I have to watch this power play. They got to steal your line, do something differently tonight.
Yeah, and I get it. Fans want to blame the officials, and the Predators have more power plays. They do. I mean, I think the Preds have been remarkably disciplined. But the Canucks did have 2 power plays in a tight game the other day. Like, do something with those 2 power plays. And they did absolutely nothing. No shots on goal. This time they couldn't even set up. Like, they had just an impossible time gaining the zone and getting into formation. So where earlier in the series it was too much perimeter play, too much passing around the outside, here they didn't even have that opportunity. They could not gain that blue line to set up. And so, JT Miller was having none of it after the game. Like, he called the group out essentially, and that's fine. I mean, I'm glad that he acknowledges that he saw the same things that we all did. It was unacceptable. But Friday night's another opportunity. The component parts are there. This power play ought to be better. My head is still spinning watching the Edmonton Oilers and the way that they corkscrewed the Los Angeles Kings, who, by the way, were one of the top penalty killing teams in the National Hockey League this regular season, and it wasn't a fair fight. Like, I was throwing the towel in at my television watching the Oilers do the thing against the Kings. This was supposed to be one of the areas that the Vancouver Canucks had a wide edge heading into the series, was that the Predators were the 22nd best penalty killing team in the National Hockey League, and that was supposed to matter, even though the Canucks power play has fluctuated and it's had its moments. And then how do you explain Game 3 where they go 2 for 3 and the only 2 goals they scored that night were with the man advantage, and they were different looks. Miller with the shot and Besser the screen, and then Besser on the doorstep and Miller with the sublime pass. Like, it's there. It's there. And the problem is that, Monday morning, maybe it's Saturday morning, but if we're talking about the power play struggling on Saturday, then they're probably playing Sunday as well. And if it gets to Monday morning and the Canucks are done, and we're talking about, the power play and the component parts and all that kind of stuff, somebody just has to figure it out. It's go time. Like, this is where a hero needs to step forward. Brock Besser has tried his best to be that guy in this series. JT Miller right there with him. But more from Quinn Hughes, obviously more from Elias Pettersson, and whoever the fifth member is of that power play. If it continues to be Elias Lindholm, then it's fair to expect more from him as well.
I was going to say that trail leads you winding back to Elias Pettersson, because if that shot's going, I think back to the Oilers. Like, everybody knows Leon Draisaitl is parked on that goal line in that same spot every single time. And guess what? He scores 1 goal per game, it seems, on the power play from that spot. There's nothing you can do about it. So if Elias Pettersson was providing what we know he can provide from the circle with his shot, if all that's normal, that should be the distraction for the Miller side for his skating downhill towards the net shot. I mean, it seemingly all leads us back to Elias Pettersson. And I know that's just a broken record over the last few weeks, over the last few months, but man, oh, man.
The power plays now at the point where it's sucking life and momentum out of the team. It's not just that they're not converting, but it's actually a negative asset at this stage of the game. Speaking of Edmonton, Jeff, you care to dare look forward to round 2?
No,
they've got their hands full and you have your full fight with the Nashville Predators. The Oilers, I mean, I'm glad that the Oilers are going to get some rest here, because they're going to need it, obviously. Yes. Whoever they face, whoever survives this battle between the Canucks and the Preds, the Oilers are going to have to be well rested. Maybe you can ice them. Maybe you can take some of the momentum off that power play, the way it was going, if they don't play for a little while here. But no, if anybody is allowing themselves to think about round 2 at this point, park that. It is all about game number 6 for the Vancouver Canucks and finding a way to break out and get to, dare I say, 3 goals. That feels like it would be an awful lot, but they did get 4, including the overtime winner there in the last game in Nashville, and they have scored 4 twice in this series, including the empty netter in game 1. But, I'm with you, Blake. Like, all roads lead back to Elias Pettersson, but in all these tight games, anybody can be the hero. Like, Nils Höglander can show up and score a goal like he did 24 times in the regular season. Sure. Connor Garland, who is hustling and has had a couple of moments, but a 20-goal scorer. Mikheyev, forget that. But there are enough guys. Dakota Joshua, I think, has been kind of disappointing, quite frankly, since the third period of the first game. And in a series, it's been big and strong and physical. I mean, that plays right into his hands, but I think he's been remarkably quiet, and obviously took the penalty the other night that led to the power play goal. So there was a negative impact in that regard. So there's another guy that I look at that I know there's more for Dakota Joshua to give, and the clock is ticking here towards the end of this series and possibly the end of the season. So, don't save it. Don't leave it in the bag. It's go time for everybody that's putting on a Canuck uniform for Friday night.
We talked about the rest if they had been able to wrap it up on Tuesday. Well, you do all the math here. They're still not beginning till next Tuesday, you would think, the next round. You win on Friday. You still got Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. You still get a good little break. There's still a dangling carrot there to make sure that you don't go to game 7 and give yourself no rest. There's still a real benefit to wrapping this thing up on Friday in game 6 rather than.
Yeah, and look, by virtue of winning the division, they know they would start the next round at home. So they getting home from Nashville, that's not easy, but you're not getting on a plane. And even if it's Edmonton, it's an easy flight, but you're at home. And so that allows you to sleep in your own bed and have all the luxuries of Rogers Arena and the training facilities and everything else. So you're right. I mean, there are absolutely some advantages. Missed a huge opportunity on Tuesday, but the opportunity is still there. They're the team that can advance. The Predators, there is no tomorrow without a win tomorrow. So, as much as it was a tough one to swallow on Tuesday night, they just got to park that and do whatever it is that they have to do to grind out the victory on Friday at Bridgestone Arena.
We look forward to it. We look forward to talking to you next, Jeff. Thank you for this, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, guys. Enjoy the game and have a great weekend.
Yeah, of course, we'll be listening to Rinkwide, watching Rinkwide Vancouver after Game 6 on Friday. It's a 4 p.m. start Pacific time. Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.